Afghan officials said 36 ISIS militants were killed when the U.S. dropped the mother of all bombs Thursday. The massive Ordnance Air Blast bomb, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the U.S.'s arsenal, was used for the first time in combat on April 13th on a series of ISIS tunnels in remote eastern Afghanistan. The Pentagon released video of the blast, which shows the so-called mother of all bombs dropped on this network of fortified underground tunnels, which ISIS had been using to stage attacks on government forces. According to the Afghan Ministry of Defense, there were no civilian casualties. ISIS caves and ammunition caches were destroyed. President Trump hailed the Afghanistan bombing as another successful job. The U.S. estimates 600 to 800 ISIS fighters are present in Afghanistan, mostly in this region of Nangarhar. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
Just weeks after North Korea flexed its military muscle by firing a ballistic missile, the U.S. is exerting its own diplomatic influence in the Asia-Pacific region. On Sunday, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence lands in South Korea, the start of a 10-day trip. He'll meet with the country's acting president. There are also scheduled meetings with Indonesia's president and the prime ministers of Australia and Japan, united in their concern North Korea is advancing its nuclear and missile programs. Japan has cautioned Pyongyang further missile testing would be a mistake.
It goes without saying that we should work on the principle that we meet action with action.
The United States has positioned a Navy carrier group near the Korean Peninsula, an effort to deter further testing. And U.S. President Donald Trump has indicated unilateral action against North Korea is still an option, though not the preferred one. After a meeting last week with China's President Xi Jinping, Trump indicated on Wednesday he'd back off pressuring China over trade if it agreed to exert its influence to rein in North Korea.
I think he wants to help us with North Korea. We talk trade, we talk a lot of things, and I said the way you're going to make a good trade deal is to help us with North Korea.
Still, North Korea's actions and Trump's discussion of unilateral force, if necessary, has made some U.S. partners nervous. Analysts say other issues like trade and the U.S. withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement are now taking a back seat.
North Korea is going to dominate the agenda, and I think all the U.S. security establishment right now is cycling through, reassuring allies about how the U.S. is handling the issue. But this is requiring, I think, much more urgent coordination, I think, than even had been expected when the administration took office or when this trip was planned.
It's unclear if North Korea is listening. Weapons experts believe it could have a nuclear missile able to reach the United States within a few years, and is also upgrading its weapons systems in response to what it claims is U.S. hostility. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Alabama's Auburn University has canceled a campus speech by Richard Spencer, a white U.S. nationalist who is best known for drawing Nazi-like salutes at a party that celebrated President Donald Trump's election. Auburn says it has decided to drop Spencer's visit scheduled for Tuesday evening based on legitimate concerns and credible evidence that it will jeopardize the safety of students, faculty, staff, and visitors. After the cancellation, Spencer has commented that he would give the speech at another location in Auburn on Tuesday.
It's a chance for North Korea and leader Kim Jong-un to show the world some muscle. Military specialists keep a close eye on Pyongyang's military parades for clues about developments in the North's capabilities. And today, they were not disappointed. First came submarine-launched ballistic missiles armed with new technology, and the new Pukgungsung-2, or Polaris, medium-range missiles, never before seen in public. But what took most by surprise was the public unveiling of an apparently new intercontinental ballistic missile. There are fears that the North could develop a nuclear warhead small enough to fit it and strike US soil. It all comes on the biggest day of the year for North Koreans, a time to celebrate the country's identity. But this year, the Day of the Sun is coming amid growing international fears of North Korea's nuclear threat and rising tensions between Washington, D.C. and Pyongyang.
If the United States wages reckless provocation against us, our revolutionary power will instantly counter it with an annihilating strike, and we will respond to full-out war with full-out war, and to nuclear war with our style of nuclear strike warfare.
The United States and South Korea have been conducting war games off the coast, which the North sees as practice for an invasion. US President Donald Trump has also been tweeting on the issue, saying that the North is looking for trouble.
You have two of the most unpredictable people on the world stage facing off against each other. You have armed armadas in position, and you have 11,000, reportedly, pieces of artillery aimed at Seoul. It's an explosive situation. The question is, how will it be resolved?
The arrival of the US Naval Strike Force is further antagonizing the North. But whether the US is willing to strike North Korea while its Vice President, Mike Pence, is in South Korea remains to be seen. Mr. Pence will spend Easter Sunday with troops and meet business and political leaders before heading to Japan on Tuesday. Craig Leeson, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
More than 240,000 active duty and reserve American forces will be deployed overseas this Easter, and commanders are finding ways for those who observe the holiday to celebrate. Celebrating holidays overseas can be tricky sometimes, particularly for those deployed to war zones where security and the mission remain the top priorities. But defense officials said where military chaplains are deployed and able, they will hold religious services. One base in Kuwait will hold an Easter run for troops deployed there.
On Saturday, a German magazine reported that the Tunisian who killed 12 people by driving a truck into a Christmas market in Berlin said he received his orders directly from the Islamic State. The militant group claimed responsibility for the attack on December 19th, but it remained unclear whether it was the Islamic State that had planned and executed it. Anas Amri, who had pledged allegiance to Islamic State, was shot dead by Italian police in Milan 4 days after the Berlin attack. About 100 people were killed Saturday in a car bomb explosion targeting pro-regime evacuees in Syria. According to CNN, the blast outside of Rashidun, a suburb of Aleppo, struck a convoy of buses carrying thousands of people. The evacuees, many from mainly pro-regime Shia villages, were bound for regime-held parts of Aleppo. They had been allowed to leave their villages as part of a Shia-Sunni exchange agreement between the Syrian government and insurgents who had been fighting a civil war for 6 years.
The top federal prosecutor on California's border with Mexico has resisted going after people caught entering the U.S. illegally on their first try. Instead, the prosecutor has targeted smugglers and serial offenders. Under President Donald Trump, the approach may face a day of reckoning. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' new directive on border crime suggests prosecutors in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas will be forced to toe a narrow line. He says each should consider felony prosecution for anyone convicted twice of entering illegally. In addition, plans should be developed to target first-time offenders and charge them with misdemeanors that could send them to jail for up to 6 months.
Despite winter storms that have turned much of California's parched landscape to vibrant green, the drought has yet to loosen its grip on thousands of residents in the valley. Many people must still use water stored in large tanks in their yard to wash dishes and bathe. Scientists at Stanford University and NASA say excessive pumping of wells during the drought has tapped out some underground sources of water that will never recover. At the height of the drought, nearly 2,400 wells dried up, affecting 12,000 people, state officials said. The drought emergency remains in effect in Kings, Fresno, Tulare, and Tulum counties, even after one of California's wettest winters in years.
According to the Oklahoman, a 51-year-old woman who dressed as a witch named Nelda to repeatedly torture her 7-year-old granddaughter has received 3 life sentences in prison. Geneva Robinson of Oklahoma City pleaded guilty to 5 counts of felony child abuse. The assistant DA says that Robinson's granddaughter had spent months living in a house of horrors in 2014. Robinson would scratch the girl's neck, hit her with a rolling pin, cut her hair while she slept, and imply she was going to eat her.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appeared in a massive parade in the capital city Saturday to celebrate the birthday of his late grandfather and North Korea founder Kim Il-sung. The parade may also feature some of the country's most valuable military hardware, including its prototype intercontinental ballistic missiles. The festivities take place amid concerns that North Korea is possibly preparing for its 6th nuclear test in a decade or a rocket launch of significance. Kim took power in late 2011 and emphasizes nuclear weapons as the foundation of his national defense strategy.
As a nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier traveled toward the region, North Korea appeared to display new long-range and sub-based missiles on Saturday. The country celebrated the 105th birthday of its founding father, Kim Il-sung, and missiles appeared to be the main theme of the large military parade. U.S. strikes on a Syrian airfield this month have raised questions about President Trump's plans to confront North Korea. In defiance of UN sanctions, North Korea has recently conducted several missile and nuclear tests.
On tax day, demonstrators across the country and abroad have set their own filing deadline for President Trump. Provide your tax returns now. Demonstrators took to the streets in more than 150 cities around the world to demand transparency and insist that lawmakers put their needs ahead of corporations and the wealthy. Organizers had hoped the marches would be among the largest political gatherings in the country since the January Women's March on Washington. Trump is the only president since Richard Nixon to refuse to release his tax returns. The White House has frequently dismissed calls for Trump to release his taxes, with advisors claiming that the issue is of more interest to the media than the American people. A Pew Research Center poll from January found that more than two-thirds of Americans believe the president has an obligation to release his tax return.
What's the likelihood of the U.S. or Pyongyang actually launching an attack?
There's always the risk of miscalculation, and there's always a time for a first, of course. So the danger is there, especially when both sides are on a rhetorical bluster barrage, as they have been on. However, at the same time, we have had de facto peace in the Korean Peninsula since the end of the Korean War. So I think it's far more likely that self-restraint will be exercised. However, the growing North Korean nuclear and missile threat, this is no joke. You know, the era of procrastination and half measures is over now, and we are entering a period of consequences. I think that's the view taken by the Trump administration as the vice president visits South Korea in a few hours.
At least 35 people have been killed and 8 more are missing as flash floods hit 4 provinces in the country's northwest. The floods were caused by torrential rains that began on Friday, with houses and cars having been swept away. Local media have called the rains Iran's most severe in 40 years.
Calling on President Donald Trump to release his tax returns, protesters are expected to take part in tax day demonstrations nationwide. Organizers say marches are planned Saturday in about 150 cities. These include Washington, D.C., where the protest begins with a rally at the U.S. Capitol. Saying it was because he was under audit, Trump is the first major party nominee in more than 40 years to not release his tax returns. Later, he claimed that voters don't care. According to protest organizers, Americans deserve to know about Trump's business ties and potential conflicts of interest. On Friday, Democratic U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts posted an online video urging Congress to force Trump to release the returns. For all other Americans, Tuesday is the deadline to file returns. The United States military said that on Thursday, the United States dropped a massive GBU-43 bomb, also known as the mother of all bombs, in eastern Afghanistan on Thursday against a series of caves used by Islamic State militants. Pentagon spokesman Adam Stump said it was the first time this type of bomb had been used in combat and was dropped from a MC-130 aircraft. Military officials said that nearly 36 suspected Islamic State militants were killed in the strike.
2 U.S. senators are proposing to make American food assistance more efficient after meeting with victims of South Sudan's famine and civil war. The act comes after President Donald Trump's plan to cut foreign aid under the slogan of America First. Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware told the Associated Press on Saturday that the U.S. can deliver more food aid at less cost through foreign food aid reform. Trump has recently proposed a budget that would cut 28% of funding for diplomacy and foreign aid.
North Korea has once again promised military action in the case of provocation by the United States. North Korean Vice Foreign Minister Hong Song-yeol said North Korea is ready to launch a preemptive strike on the U.S. if it engages in reckless military aggression. He made the comments to the Associated Press on Friday, April 14th. He also blamed President Trump for raising tensions, saying, quote, "Trump is always making provocations with his aggressive words." Trump also sent an aircraft carrier group to the Korean Peninsula in response to the North's latest missile test. Rising tensions have countries in the region worried, urging the two to de-escalate. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Friday North Korea and the U.S. must stop provocation and threats before the situation gets out of hand. Meanwhile, Japan's National Security Council reportedly discussed evacuating its citizens in South Korea in the event of war. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.